What's going on, guys? Kaiger here. Today we're going to talk about Milum and Rimu, talk about their abilities, show you how they work, ins and outs of how to play with them and play against them, and which one's best. Let's get into it. Alright guys, so we're going to start with Milum, talk about the abilities, go over and show you the skill, how to play around it, how it actually works in game, and then we're going to do the same thing with Rimu. So first, actually really decently high HP, higher attack than any non-holy unit, minus Anatheria and Chestnut. I'll have another video about the stats for these fairies and such. But really high attack, really high HP, defenses, whatever, gives you the really ones that matter here are tenacity and crit, and a big amount of block and HP. So it's actually, you can do holy, and this will give you good stats for even a tankier build. So looking at the basic attack, no additional effect on it, so we can ignore that. The passive skill, Tyrant of Destruction. This is going to be a big one that's going to matter in a lot of PvP. This skill triggers when switching flower fairies or companions to Milum through class switching. So if you go from a different class to the one that has Milum equipped, this will trigger even if you're in something like Top League where you cannot summon fairies. Passives still work. It will immediately deal damage equal to 155% damage to surrounding enemies within 10 meters. That's actually a very large area. If you kind of know the range of where you come in for arena or the knockouts Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of Shrine Rivalry, it's that range. That is right about 10 meters. You can actually see that when you're doing the loading in screen. You can actually swap classes during that 3, 2, 1, and then it'll do it and it'll hit them dealing damage before the fight even begins. Increasing their taken damage from flower fairies and companions by 3% and reducing their movement speed by 15%. Can't be triggered but once every 30 seconds. So that first part of increasing damage they take from fairies or companions, that won't do anything in things like Top League because the flower fairies won't do extra damage. Even if you swap classes to something like water that has the passive that it will deal bonus damage, throws that water ball at them in Top League and such, that will not work because that is you dealing damage, not the fairy dealing damage, if that makes sense. Now, it's important to note that this calls out companion because there are talks of them doing a pet system at some point, and this will probably affect the pets at that time. Now, as we look at as it scales, more damage from flower fairies or companions and more movement speed slow. And that is the main thing that goes up, as well as the AoE damage. This is just free, easy damage. You're always going to want it. Now for the actual active. Fires rays of blue-white light, dealing damage to enemies in target area. When the skill is released, it locks onto the enemies, making them unable to move. That's going to be very important. We'll talk exactly how that works. And provides a 10% attack bonus to master for 6 seconds. Looking at the scaling, the level 2 is one of the biggest boosts. It actually heals you for 30% of the damage done. Level 5, unable to move increases by 1 second, so they will be unable to move for 3 seconds. And then down here at the bottom, when an enemy is hit, target's movement speed reduces their movement speed by 50%, and their defense is reduced by 20%, looking a whole lot like that defense lowering effect like Balloon Flower, for example. Let's show you what it looks like and how it works. Alright, so I believe this first one is Milum. Let's see if you guys can see that alright. Yep. Alright. So we're going to watch it one more time. Alright. So the moment you click the button, notice how it goes from the mini chibi Milum, and then she disappears, and the moment she becomes the big Milum and goes to do the skill, that is the lock-on effect. Even though she hasn't fired the skill yet, whatever person that was targeting cannot move for 2 seconds, or 3 if you've leveled it up. Then she fires the lasers. That's why a lot of people thought initially on her first pass she wasn't as good, because they were like, man, this is a long animation, I could just dodge it, not going to be a big deal. But it's a very, very short window that you have to dodge it. Under half a second to see that animation. The moment you see the mini Milum disappear, dodge. You're out of there. Let me know if you like these little insight things like these on fairies, and I can do another one on the bigger fairies and what to look out for. But if you dodge now, and that like half a second when she disappears and goes to a big Milum, then you will not be locked in, and that dodge will also put you out of range of the actual blast. Now let's go over and talk about Rimu. Alright, talking about the stats: less HP, less attack, about 50% more defense. Defense, block, break, tenacity, that's a full tank stat line. More defensive focused, but less HP from the top half. So Rimu is looking more as a support, which that's kind of weird that it puts DPS up there. It does do damage, but Rimu is in a lot of ways looked as a support, as we'll see. From the basic, no special effect, passive, corruption. When any damage dealt by Rimu, that includes their basic attack, hits an enemy, 3% chance enemy to get a random debuff. Either minus attack, minus defense, minus crit, minus block, minus movement speed. The debuff added by this skill will be seen as a buff, so it shows up in the buff bar for 3 seconds. There's also no cooldown on this, so it always happens. Probability goes up all the way up to 5%. Then the active, King of Gluttony. Deals damage based on your attack. Enemies in front. When the skill hits an enemy, it devours the target's buffs for 6 seconds. For each buff completely devoured, Master gets a non-repetible, repeating random buff in addition for 4 seconds. It'll either be damage increase, crit damage increase, pierce, HP steal rate, damage reduction, or immunity to control. So if you steal 6 effects, you will get all of these. And it does a cone, as we'll see, so if you hit 2 or 3 people, you can have more that you can take. The issue being, most things you think could be a buff to steal aren't. For example, priest buff. There are 2 effects to the priest buff: the attack / crit bonus and the shield. This will eat the shield. It will not steal the other bonus because it's not, for whatever reason, seen as a buff. Same thing with something like rigidity, which gives you a shield and damage reduction. It'll eat the shield, but it won't take away the damage reduction. Now, something like the Rangers break free, that gives them the crit and crit damage bonus that will eat the crit and crit damage bonus. So you have to watch out you have to play with King of Gluttony, get a friend or two, test it out, see what it works and does not work against. For example, something like Strength of Nature, that makes them invisible and gives them the speed buff. It'll eat the speed buff. Now, random level 2 increases the damage and makes the self buff increase to 6 seconds instead of 4. The big one is going to be level 5, which when you use the skill, while it's active for 3 seconds, it'll give the master a 30% defense buff. And then down here at 8, and the devouring of the buff lasts for 9 seconds. At the same time, for each buff, you will get 2 buffs. So if you eat 3, then you'll get all 6 buffs. Now let's show you what the effect looks like and how it works. Alright, press play, and you see it does this cone in front of you. It gets wider and as it goes back, so you want to use this at kind of a range, like a medium range, but you don't really want to be right on top of them, because then it's a very small part of the cone right here, and they could easily go left or right. If you use it when they're at kind of medium range, like here, then it's more likely that you will clip them with it. And as we see, it lasts for 3 seconds. So here, 1 second, and then by the time it goes to full range, a third of the effect is already concluded by the time it gets to full range. So it's really 2 seconds. Boom, boom, and then right, like as it hits 4 seconds, it's gone. So the range is kind of far, but it lasts for 3 seconds, takes 1 second to go the full range, and then like a quarter of a second towards the end is the animation of it ending, where it's not actually dealing damage. This is why in most context, Milum is seen as the better option, especially for PvP, but Milum will have niche cases that you can use, especially as a support person, if you're in a top league team, guild war, or whatnot, where you are not a big player, but you want to help the team, and you want to use the Holy Echo. It's a great one to bring for that. Both can be used, but generally, if you're doing PvP, you're looking at like these ones right here, Licorice, Milum, Sakura, and that fourth one is kind of up in the air, Hibiscus, if you have her. These are just ones that are head and shoulders above the rest in a lot of cases, with their base stats, their passives. Rimu's passive can't even trigger in things like Top League, because it requires a Rimu to deal damage to someone, but Rimu can't deal damage to someone because Rimu's not there. Let me know what you guys think down below. Till next time.